The alien trader looked around nervously before speaking. His four eyes kept moving, checking every corner of the space station bar. When he was sure no humans were nearby, he leaned close to his friend. "Did you hear what happened at the mining colony?" he whispered. His voice shook a little. The other alien, a tall creature with blue skin, shook his head. "What happened?" "Pirates attacked. 50 ships. They had the colony surrounded. The humans had only 3 ships, and the humans won. All 50 pirate ships were destroyed. The humans lost no one." The blue alien's eyes went wide. "How is that possible?" "That's what everyone asks about humans. They don't fight like normal people. They don't stop. They don't give up. Even when they should die, they keep fighting." Across the galaxy, these kinds of talks happened every day. In every spaceport, on every trade route, aliens spoke about humans in quiet voices. They told stories that seemed impossible. Stories of human ships flying into black holes to study them. Stories of human soldiers fighting for days without food or water. Stories of humans who smiled when they were losing. Most aliens had never seen a human. They knew humans existed somewhere in a small part of the galaxy. They knew humans had fast ships and strong weapons. But what scared them most were the stories. Stories that grew bigger each time they were told. Captain Deho did not know about these stories as he sat in his ship near the edge of human space. He was doing a normal patrol, checking for pirates or smugglers. His ship was small but fast. He had been flying patrols for 5 years. It was quiet work, and he liked it that way. The communication system beeped. Someone was calling from far away. Deho pressed a button. "This is Captain Deho of Earth Defense." "Who is calling?" The voice that answered was strange. It spoke human language, but with an accent Deho had never heard. "Captain, this is Ambassador Velthari of the Galactic Council. We need to talk to your leaders. It is very important." Deho sat up straight. The Galactic Council was the group that ruled most of the galaxy. They had never talked to humans before. Humans were not part of their council. Most aliens wanted nothing to do with humans. "What do you want to talk about?" Deho asked. "Something terrible is coming. Something that will destroy everything. We need help. We need human help." An hour later, Deho's ship was flying toward Earth as fast as it could go. Behind him came a small alien ship. Inside that ship, Ambassador Velthari tried to stop her hands from shaking. She had never been this close to human space before. Everything she had heard about humans told her to stay away. But the Galactic Council was desperate. The ancient enemy had returned. The Devourers were awake again. The Devourers were older than most civilizations. Long ago, they had eaten entire star systems. They turned planets into empty rocks. They took the life from everything they touched. The old races had fought them for 1,000 years before finally winning. The Devourers were pushed into deep space and went to sleep. Now they were back. And they were hungry. Admiral Boram was working late in her office on Earth's main space station when the message came in. She was a small woman with gray hair, but when she spoke, everyone listened. She had been in charge of Earth's defenses for 10 years. "Admiral," her assistant said, "Captain Deho is coming back early. He has an alien with him. Says it's urgent." Boram raised an eyebrow. In her 10 years as Admiral, no alien had ever visited Earth. Most aliens were too scared. "Send them to meeting room 3, she said. "And call the council. Tell them we have a visitor." Velthari's legs were weak as she walked through the human space station. She had expected to see weapons everywhere. She had expected soldiers and guards. Instead, she saw humans walking around normally. Some were laughing. Some were reading. Children played in the hallways. These were the creatures that all of space feared. But when Admiral Boram walked into the meeting room, Velthari understood a little better. The human woman was small, but something about her made Velthari want to step back. Her eyes were calm but very alert. She moved like someone who had fought many battles. "Ambassador," Boram said, sitting down, "Captain Deho tells me you have something important to discuss." Velthari took a deep breath. "Admiral, my people have made a mistake. For many years we have avoided your species. We have told ourselves that humans are too dangerous to deal with. But now we need your help." "What kind of help?" "The Devourers have returned. They attacked the outer colonies 3 days ago. Nothing we have can stop them. They are coming toward the center of the galaxy, toward all our home worlds." Boram's face did not change, but her eyes got colder. "Tell me about these Devourers." Velthari explained everything. She told Boram about the ancient war, about how the Devourers consumed life itself. about how they grew stronger with each world they destroyed. She showed pictures from the attacked colonies. Empty planets with no life left on them. How long do we have? Boram asked. Maybe 6 months before they reach the main council worlds. Maybe less. Boram was quiet for a long time. Finally she spoke. Ambassador, you said your people avoided humans because we are dangerous. What exactly do you think we are? Velthari looked uncomfortable. We hear stories. That humans never surrender. That you fight until you die. That you do impossible things. And you think this makes us monsters? We think it makes you unpredictable, dangerous. Boram smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Ambassador, you have no idea how dangerous we can be. But you're about to find out. And so are the Devourers. She stood up. I'll talk to the Earth Council. We'll give you an answer tomorrow. As Velthari left the meeting room, she felt both hope and fear. Hope because humans might help them. Fear because she was starting to understand that the stories about humans might not be stories at all. Far away, in the mountains of Earth, an old man named Hyun Sik finished his morning meditation. He opened his eyes and looked at the sunrise. Something felt different today. Something was changing. He did not know that his peaceful life was about to end. He did not know that soon, the galaxy would learn that all their stories about humans were nothing compared to the truth. The Earth Defense Council would meet tonight. They would make a decision that would change everything. And they would reveal secrets that they had kept hidden for a very long time. In space, the Devourers moved closer. They were hungry. They had been sleeping for so long. Soon they would feed again. But they had never faced humans before. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Admiral Boram stood in front of the 12 members of the Earth Defense Council. The room was deep underground, in a place that did not exist on any map. The people sitting around the table looked ordinary. They could have been teachers or doctors or farmers. But each of them held secrets that could change the galaxy. The situation is simple, Boram said. An ancient enemy has returned. They want our help. The question is, do we reveal who we really are? Council member Dr. Yunji leaned forward. She was a thin woman with kind eyes, but when she spoke, everyone listened. How much do they know about us? Only the stories. They think regular humans are dangerous. They have no idea about the others. The others was how the Council talked about Earth's greatest secret. For hundreds of years, Earth had been home to humans who were different. Some called them mutants. Some called them evolved. The Council called them champions. If we help them, said another council member, we cannot hide anymore. The secret will come out, Boram nodded. I know. But if we don't help, billions of people will die. And eventually the Devourers will come here too. The vote was not close. 12-0. Earth would help. But first, they would show the galaxy what they had been hiding. The next morning, Ambassador Velthari waited nervously in the meeting room. She had not slept well. Dreams of empty planets and hungry monsters had filled her night. When Admiral Boram entered, Velthari could see the answer in her eyes. We will help you, Boram said simply. Velthari felt like crying with relief. Thank you. We can send you the location of our main fleet. Our generals will be happy to work with your soldiers. Ambassador, Boram said, before we begin, there are some things you need to see. Some things your people need to understand about humans. Boram pressed a button on the table. Dr. Yunji, please come in. And bring our guests. The door opened. Dr. Yunji walked in, followed by 4 humans. They looked normal. One was a young man in farmer's clothes. One was a woman who looked like a librarian. One was a middle-aged man in hiking gear. One was an old man in simple robes. Velthari looked confused. These humans looked like ordinary people. Why was Admiral Boram showing them to her? Ambassador, Dr. Yunji said. What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest level. Your people think regular humans are dangerous. You have no idea how right you are, but you also have no idea how wrong you are. She gestured to the farmer. This is Minho. He grows vegetables on Jeju Island. Minho, would you please demonstrate? Minho stepped forward. He looked embarrassed. Do I have to? It's important, Dr. Yunji said gently. Minho sighed and walked over to a wall. On the wall was a viewing window that looked out into space. Through the window, Velthari could see a large cargo ship floating nearby. Minho raised his hand toward the window. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The cargo ship began to move. Velthari blinked. The ship was huge. It weighed thousands of tons. but it was rising slowly, turning in space like someone was picking it up. Minho opened his eyes and lowered his hand. The ship settled back into its original position. Minho can manipulate gravity, Dr. Yunji explained. He doesn't like to show off, but he can move planets if he needs to. Belthari stared at the farmer. He looked so normal, so harmless. How is this possible? We don't fully understand it ourselves, Dr. Yunji said. Some humans are born different. Some learn to be different. Some become different through training or accidents or just believing hard enough. She gestured to the woman who looked like a librarian. This is So Young. She works at the Seoul National Library. So Young. So Young smiled shyly and walked toward the wall. Then she walked through it. Belthari jumped up from her chair. The human woman had just walked through solid metal like it was air. A few seconds later, So Young's head popped back through the wall. Sorry, So Young said. I know it's scary the first time you see it. She stepped back through the wall completely. I can change how my body interacts with matter. It's useful for finding lost books in the archives. Dr. Yunji gestured to the man in hiking gear. Jinwoo is a mountain guide. He knows everything about rocks and minerals. Jinwoo, the demonstration, please. Jinwoo picked up a steel paperweight from the table. He held it in his palm and stared at it. Slowly, the steel began to change. First it became silver. Then it became gold. Then it became diamond. He handed the diamond to Belthari. It was real. It was perfect. I can change the structure of atoms, Jinwoo said simply. It's helpful when tourists want souvenirs. Finally, Dr. Yunji gestured to the old man in robes. This is Master Kyung-ho. He has been training in the mountains for 70 years. Master? The old man smiled and reached into his robes. He pulled out a sword that seemed to be made of light itself. The blade hurt to look at directly. It seemed to cut through the air just by existing. This blade can cut through anything, Master Kyung-ho said. Space, time, reality itself. I forged it from crystallized starlight and compressed possibility. He put the sword away and it disappeared completely. Belthari sat down heavily. Her legs would not hold her up anymore. How many of these champions do you have? We're not sure, Admiral Boram said. Maybe a few thousand, maybe more. Most of them live quiet lives. They work normal jobs. They have families. They help their neighbors. Most of the galaxy doesn't know they exist. Until now, Dr. Yunji added. Boram stood up. Ambassador, your people have spent years being afraid of regular humans. You've told stories about our soldiers and explorers and diplomats, but you've never met our champions. The Devourers are about to make that mistake too. Belthari's hands were shaking. What are you saying? I'm saying we're going to help you, but not with regular soldiers. We're sending our champions to fight the Devourers, and when this is over, the galaxy is going to understand something very important. What? That all those stories you've been telling about humans? They weren't stories at all. They were warnings. Captain Daeho received his new orders an hour later. He was to escort a small group of special advisors to the front lines. The ship they would travel in was not a military vessel. It looked like a simple transport. But when Daeho met his passengers, he understood that nothing about this mission would be simple. Hyun-sik was the last to board. He had been meditation in the mountains when the call came. Now he stood on the deck of a starship looking out at the stars. He could feel something dark moving in the distance, something hungry and old and full of hate. The other champions gathered around him, Minho still in his farming clothes, So Young carrying a small bag of books, Jinwoo with his hiking boots and backpack, Master Kyung-ho looking like any old man you might meet in a park. Are you ready? Hyun-sik asked them. No one is ever ready for something like this, Master Kyung-ho said. But we will do what must be done. The ship jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and disappeared. Ahead of them waited a war that would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. In the deepest parts of space, the Devourers felt something new, a taste they had never experienced before. They had consumed thousands of species over the millennia. They knew the flavor of every kind of life. But this was different. This was human, and they were hungry to try it. The war was about to begin. The galaxy would learn the truth about Earth's champions, and the universe would never be the same. Admiral Boram watched the ship disappear into hyperspace. She said a quiet prayer to whatever gods might be listening. Then she began preparing for what would come next. Win or lose, there would be no more secrets after this. The galaxy would know what humans really were. She hoped they would be ready for the answer. The Kepler defense line stretched across space like a wall of metal and light. Thousands of ships from dozens of species floated in formation, waiting for the enemy. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Every major civilization had sent their best ships and their bravest soldiers. Admiral Il Sung stood on the bridge of the massive galactic command ship, watching his sensors. The alien admiral was old and experienced. He had fought in 3 wars and never lost a battle. But he had never faced anything like the Devourers. "Sir," his communications officer called, "the human transport is requesting permission to dock." Il Sung looked at the screen. The human ship was tiny compared to the massive war vessels around it. It looked like a simple cargo transport. "That's our reinforcements?" "According to the reports, yes, sir." Il Sung shook his head. The Galactic Council had told him that humans were sending special soldiers. He had expected a fleet of warships and thousands of troops. Instead, he got one small transport with maybe 20 people on it. Still, the stories about humans were impressive. Maybe quantity didn't matter to them. When the human ship docked, Il Sung went to meet their representatives. He expected to see soldiers in armor carrying advanced weapons. Instead, he saw 5 humans who looked like they were going on vacation. Captain Daeho saluted properly. "Admiral Il Sung, I'm Captain Daeho. These are our special advisors." Il Sung looked at the special advisors. A farmer, a librarian, a hiking guide, and an old man who looked like he taught meditation. The 5th human, Hyun-sik, seemed more promising. He was alert and calm like a soldier, but he wore simple clothes and carried no weapons. "These are your elite forces?" Il Sung asked. "Yes, sir," Daeho replied. "They volunteered to help." Il Sung tried not to show his disappointment. The fleet had been hoping for human super soldiers with amazing technology. Instead, they got 5 ordinary-looking people, but when Hyun-sik stepped forward, something changed. Il Sung could not explain it, but the air in the room felt different. Calmer, more focused. "Admiral," Hyun-sik said quietly, "we know this looks strange, but we're here to help. All we ask is that you trust us when the time comes." Before Il Sung could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The sensors had detected something massive approaching from deep space. "The Devourers are here," someone shouted. On the main screen, the enemy appeared. It was worse than Il Sung had imagined. The Devourer fleet was enormous. Ships the size of moons floated in formation. Each one pulsed with dark energy. And behind them came something even worse, the Devourer Queen. She was not a ship. She was a living creature the size of a small planet. Her body was covered in biomechanical armor that gleamed like black metal. Thousands of smaller creatures swarmed around her, ready to attack. "How many ships do they have?" Il Sung asked. "Sensors show over 10,000 vessels, sir, and that's just the ones we can see." The Allied fleet had 3,000 ships. They were outnumbered more than 3 to 1. "All ships, battle stations," Il Sung ordered. "Prepare for him," he stopped. Something was happening on the bridge. The fear that had been growing in every alien heart was suddenly gone. In its place was calm confidence. Il Sung looked around and saw that Hyun-sik had closed his eyes. The human was standing very still, breathing slowly, and somehow his calm was spreading to everyone around him. "What are you doing?" Il Sung asked. "The Devourers feed on fear," Hyun-sik said without opening his eyes. "They make people afraid, then they eat that fear to become stronger. I'm making sure they stay hungry." Across the fleet, alien soldiers stopped panicking. The terrible dread that had filled their hearts faded away. They could think clearly again. They could fight. The Devourers attacked. Their ships moved like living things, flowing through space in patterns that hurt to watch. They fired weapons that didn't just destroy matter. They destroyed the idea of matter. Where their beams hit, Allied ships simply stopped existing. The Allied fleet fought back, but their weapons barely scratched the enemy ships. The Devourer's armor absorbed energy and grew stronger. Conventional weapons were useless. "We need to retreat," Il Sung's tactical officer said. "We're losing ships too fast." But then the humans acted. Minho stepped onto the bridge and walked to the viewing window. He looked out at the battle and raised his hands. "Admiral, you might want to hold on to something." Il Sung was about to ask why when he felt it. Gravity was changing. Out in space, Devourer ships suddenly found themselves being pulled in different directions. Minho was creating gravity wells and gravity waves, using the enemy's own momentum against them. Massive Devourer warships crashed into each other as their navigation systems tried to compensate for gravity that kept changing. One devourer ship the size of a city was pulled into a gravity spiral and crushed into a ball of metal, the size of a car. At the same time, So Young appeared on the bridge of a devourer command ship. The aliens on board turned to attack her, but their weapons passed right through her body. She smiled and began pressing buttons on their control systems. She moved through the ship like a ghost, appearing and disappearing. Every time she appeared, another system failed. Engines shut down. Weapons stopped working. Life support systems began venting atmosphere into space. Jinwoo was working more quietly but just as effectively. He reached across space with his mind, touching the hulls of enemy ships. Where he touched them, their armor turned to gas. Their weapons became harmless plastic. Their power cores transformed into harmless crystals. In minutes, dozens of devourer ships were floating helplessly in space. But the real shock came when Master Kyung-ho acted. The old man pulled out his impossible sword and held it ready. Then he did something that made no sense. He swung it at empty space. The sword cut through reality itself. A line of light appeared in space, extending from the Master's blade all the way to the devourer fleet. Where the light touched enemy ships, they split in half, not destroyed, divided. Cut so cleanly that both halves continued to function for a few seconds before they realized they had been separated. Admiral Il-sung watched in amazement as 5 humans did what his entire fleet could not do. They were winning. But then the Devourer Queen moved. She opened her mouth and screamed. The sound traveled through space in ways that sound should not travel. It was not just noise, it was pure terror made into a weapon. Alien soldiers throughout the fleet collapsed, clutching their heads. Some went insane. Others simply died of fear. Even Il-sung felt his mind breaking under the assault. The Queen's scream was reaching into his thoughts and turning them into nightmares. But the humans stood firm. Yun-sik opened his eyes, and they were glowing with soft light. "Now it gets interesting," he said. He stepped forward and spoke in a voice that somehow carried across space to reach the Queen herself. "You want to feed on fear? Try this." He reached out with his mind and touched the Queen's consciousness. What he showed her was not fear. It was something the Devourers had never experienced before. Hope. The Queen's scream cut off. For the first time in millions of years, a Devourer felt something other than hunger. She felt the possibility that things could be different, that life could create instead of consume. That existence could be about more than eating and growing. The feeling terrified her more than anything ever had. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice carrying across space. "What are you?" Yun-sik smiled. "We're human, and we're just getting started." The Queen rallied her forces for a final assault. She would destroy these strange creatures and consume their hope. She would feast on their defiance and grow stronger than ever before. But as she prepared to attack, she made a terrible mistake. She tried to read their minds, to understand what they were. What she found there broke something fundamental in her understanding of the universe. These humans were not afraid of her. They were not even impressed by her. To them, she was just another problem to solve. Another challenge to overcome. They looked at her the way a farmer might look at a weed that needed to be pulled. And behind their calm confidence, she sensed something even worse. She sensed that they were holding back, that they could do much more than they were showing. For the first time in her existence, the Devourer Queen felt fear, and Yun-sik smiled, because now he could taste it. The Devourer Queen's fear lasted only a moment. She had ruled the darkness between stars for millions of years. She had consumed entire galaxies. A few strange humans would not defeat her. She pulled her consciousness back from their minds and prepared for war. The Queen's body began to change. Her biomechanical armor shifted and flowed, revealing weapons that defied understanding, cannons that fired concentrated despair, missiles that carried pure entropy, shields made from crystallized nightmares. But worse than her weapons was what she released from inside herself. The Queen opened ports along her massive body, and millions of creatures poured out. They were not ships or robots. They were pieces of her, extensions of her will. Each one was the size of a building and moved like a living shadow. They swarmed toward the Allied fleet like a plague of darkness. "All ships concentrate fire on the swarm," Admiral Il-sung ordered. But he knew it was hopeless. There were too many of them. The alien weapons destroyed hundreds of the creatures, but thousands more kept coming. They covered the Allied ships like a blanket of living night. Where they touched the hulls, metal began to dissolve. The creatures were eating the ships from the outside in. "We're being boarded on all decks," reported Il-sung's communications officer. "The creatures are inside the ships now." Il-sung could hear the screaming through the comm system. The devourer creatures were not just destroying the ships, they were consuming the crews. But it was worse than simple death. The creatures were draining the life force from their victims, taking their memories and experiences and feeding them to the Queen. "Admiral," Hyun-sik said calmly, "we need to get inside the Queen." Il-sung stared at him. "Inside, that's suicide. Nothing can survive inside a devourer." "We can," Hyun-sik replied, "but we need a way to reach her." So Young stepped forward. "I can get us there, but I'll need help maintaining the phase shift for all of us." "I can create a gravity tunnel," Minho added. "It will give us a clear path through her defenses." Master Kyung-ho drew his impossible sword. "And I can cut us an entrance that she cannot heal." Jinwoo nodded. "I can keep her biosystems from adapting to our presence." Il-sung looked at the 5 humans. They were talking about assaulting a creature the size of a planet, a creature that had destroyed entire star systems, and they seemed confident that they could do it. "What do you need from us?" he asked. "Just keep fighting," Hyun-sik said. "Keep the swarm busy. We'll handle the Queen." Before Il-sung could respond, the humans were gone. So Young had phased them all through the deck of the ship. They fell through space toward the Queen, but they were not falling normally. Minho had wrapped them in a gravity field that pulled them forward like a bullet. The Queen's defenses tried to stop them. Beams of pure death shot out from her surface. Fields of crushing force tried to flatten them. Waves of psychic terror attempted to drive them insane. Nothing worked. The death beams passed through them as So Young kept them phased between dimensions. The crushing forces slid around them as Minho redirected gravity itself. The psychic attacks broke against Hyun-sik's calm mind like waves against a cliff. Master Kyung-ho raised his sword and cut a hole in reality. The blade sliced through the Queen's armor as if it were paper. The wound glowed with impossible light and refused to heal. The 5 humans dropped through the hole into the Queen's body. Inside the devourer, Queen was a nightmare landscape of living technology and absorbed consciousness. The walls were made from the memories of 1 billion consumed civilizations. The air was thick with the screams of the dead. Cables made from crystallized suffering connected massive organs that pulsed with stolen life. "Stay close," Hyun-sik warned. "This place will try to break your mind." They moved deeper into the Queen's body, following pathways that shifted and changed around them. The Queen was trying to trap them, to confuse them, to make them lost in her labyrinthine interior. But Jinwoo reached out and touched the walls as they passed. Where he touched them, the living metal became simple steel. The screaming cables became ordinary wires. The nightmares became just bad dreams. "She's fighting back," So Young observed. The walls were trying to close in around them, but she kept them phased so the attacks passed through empty space. They reached the Queen's central chamber, and there they found the true horror. The chamber was filled with billions of glowing spheres. Each sphere contained a consciousness that the Queen had consumed. The memories, experiences, and souls of entire species floated in perfect preservation, feeding the Queen's power. "All these people," Minho whispered. "She's kept them alive just to torture them." "Not anymore," Master Kyung-ho said grimly. At the center of the chamber was the Queen's true form. Not the massive creature they had seen outside, but something much smaller and more terrible. She was beautiful and horrible at the same time. Her body was made from crystallized starlight, but her face showed the madness of eternal hunger. "So," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "the little predators have come to face me. Do you know what I am?" "You're a parasite," Hyun-sik said simply. "A very old, very hungry parasite, but still just a parasite." The Queen laughed, and the sound shattered some of the consciousness spheres. "I am the end of all things. I am the hunger that devours hope. I am the darkness that swallows light. I have consumed galaxies. What are 5 little humans to me?" "We're the people who are going to stop you," Hyun-sik replied. The Queen attacked. She did not use weapons or technology. She attacked with pure will, trying to tear their minds apart and consume their souls. The assault was like being hit by a star. The force of her hunger was beyond description. But the human stood firm. Hyun-sik met her attack with something she had never encountered before. Not resistance, but acceptance. He did not fight her hunger, he absorbed it. He took her endless craving into himself and transformed it into something else. Compassion. The queen staggered. "What are you doing?" "Showing you another way," Hyunsik said. His body was glowing now, filled with light that came from inside. All that hunger. All that need. You could use it to create instead of destroy. You could feed on joy instead of fear. You could build instead of consume. "Impossible," the queen snarled. "I am what I am. I cannot change." "Everything can change," So Young said. She was moving through the chamber, touching the consciousness spheres. Where she touched them, they began to crack open. The trapped souls inside started to wake up. "You're freeing them?" the queen gasped.
"They are mine!"
"I consumed them fairly." "Nobody belongs to anyone," Jinwoo said. He was working on the chamber's biomechanical systems, changing their fundamental structure. Instead of feeding the queen's power, they began to channel energy to the awakening consciousness. Minho was manipulating gravity throughout the chamber, creating gentle fields that helped the freed souls rise toward the light. Everyone deserves a chance to move on. The queen felt her power draining away as billions of consciousness escaped her grasp. She had built her strength on their suffering. Without them, she was just an old creature with an empty belly. But Master Kyung-ho was not finished. He approached the queen with his sword drawn. "You have one choice," he said quietly. "Change or end. Those are your only options." "I will not change," the queen hissed. "I will find new galaxies to consume. I will." Master Kyung-ho moved faster than thought. His blade cut through the queen's body, but it did not kill her. Instead, it cut away everything she had become. All the consumed power, all the stolen memories, all the accumulated darkness of millions of years. What remained was something very small and very afraid. The original creature that had become the Devourer Queen was tiny. She looked like a child made of starlight, lost and alone in the darkness. She had been hungry for so long that she had forgotten there was anything else to be. Hyunsik knelt down beside her. "What's your name?" The small creature looked up at him with ancient eyes. I don't remember. I've been hungry for so long." "The hunger doesn't have to define you," Hyunsik said gently. "You can choose to be something else." Around them, the queen's massive body was collapsing. But it was not dying. It was transforming. The biomechanical horror was becoming something new, something that created instead of consumed. The small creature that had been the queen looked around at the billions of freed souls rising toward the light. They're beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," Hyunsik agreed. "They are. And so are you." In space outside, Admiral Il-sung watched in amazement as the Devourer fleet suddenly stopped fighting. The creature ships were changing, their dark armor becoming bright. The swarm that had been consuming his fleet was now helping to repair the damaged vessels. The war was over, but the real change was just beginning. The death of the Devourer Queen was not like other deaths. When her massive body finally collapsed, it did not explode or burn. Instead, it dissolved into points of light that spread across the galaxy like seeds on the wind. Each point of light was a consciousness that had been trapped inside her for millions of years. Beings from civilizations so old that their names had been forgotten were finally free to find peace. They rose into the cosmic winds and sailed toward whatever afterlife their species believed in. Hyunsik stood in the queen's former chamber, watching the lights rise. The small creature that the queen had once been sat beside him, no longer hungry, no longer angry. She was learning to remember who she had been before the hunger consumed her. "What will happen to them?" she asked, watching the lights disappear into the distance. "They'll go where they need to go," Hyunsik said gently. "Some will find rest. Some will be reborn. Some will become something new. That's their choice now." So Young appeared beside them, phasing through the dissolving walls. "The last of the consciousness spheres are empty. Everyone is free," Minho's voice echoed through the chamber. He was outside, helping guide the transformation of the queen's body into something that could create instead of destroy. "The biosystems are stabilizing. This place is becoming something like a garden." Jinwoo was working on the fundamental structure of the former queen's technology. Where once there had been weapons that consumed life, now there were tools that could grow new worlds. "The conversion is almost complete. This will become a place where life can flourish." Master Kyung-ho sheathed his impossible sword. The blade disappeared into whatever dimension it came from. "The galaxy is safe," he said simply. "Our work here is done." But their work was far from over. News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species, every civilization, every individual who had feared the return of the Devourers learned that the ancient threat was gone forever. And they learned who had saved them: humans. The same creatures that the galaxy had whispered about in fear had just saved everyone's lives. Admiral Il-sung found himself fielding communications from across the galaxy. Presidents and emperors and tribal chiefs all wanted to know the same thing. What did the humans want in return? The answer surprised them all. Nothing. Admiral Boram arrived at the Kepler defense line 3 days after the battle. She came not in a warship, but in a simple diplomatic vessel. With her came representatives from Earth's government and a small group of other champions who had volunteered to help with what came next. The meeting took place on Il-sung's command ship. Representatives from every major galactic civilization were present, either in person or through holographic projection. The room was filled with species that had never trusted each other, but they were all united by one thing: they wanted to understand humans. Admiral Boram, Il-sung began formally. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for your people's help. The debt we owe cannot be calculated. Boram smiled. There is no debt, Admiral. We helped because it was the right thing to do. But surely you want something in return, pressed Ambassador Velthari. Territory? Resources? Trade agreements? What we want, Boram said, is friendship. The room fell silent. Across the galaxy, beings who had spent years fearing humans were learning that humans wanted to be friends. We've been isolated for too long, Boram continued. My people are curious about your cultures, your ideas, your ways of life. We want to learn from you, and we hope you might want to learn from us. Dr. Yunji stepped forward. We would like to establish cultural exchange programs. Our champions could teach other species about their abilities. Your scholars could study on Earth. We could share knowledge and technology. But the champions, Il-sung said carefully, they are incredibly powerful. What assurance do we have that they won't use their abilities to conquer us? Master Kyung-ho spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but carried clearly through the room. Power without wisdom is destruction. Wisdom without compassion is cruelty. Our champions learn both before they learn to use their abilities. Besides, Minho added with a shy smile, I just want to go back to my farm. Fighting monsters is scary, the Sar. Aliens looked at the man who had single-handedly disabled dozens of Devourer ships and called it scary. They were beginning to understand that humans might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, precisely because they didn't want to be dangerous. Over the following months, everything changed. Earth opened its borders to alien visitors for the first time. Scientists from 100 worlds came to study human genetics, trying to understand how champions developed their abilities. They learned that while some humans were born different, others achieved their powers through meditation, training, or simply believing strongly enough in impossible things. Dr. Yunji established the Galactic Institute for Extraordinary Development. The institute had campuses on 12 worlds and accepted students from every known species. They learned that while humans seemed to have the most champions, other species could develop similar abilities with the right training. Minho's farm became a pilgrimage site. Beings from across the galaxy came to learn about Earth agriculture and to meet the man who could move planets but preferred growing tomatoes. He was always embarrassed by the attention, but he patiently taught anyone who wanted to learn. So Young opened the Great Galactic Library, where knowledge from every known civilization was stored and shared freely. The library existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing visitors to access information that would normally be impossible to contain in one place. Jin Woo established schools on worlds that had been damaged by war or disaster. He taught students how to transform ruined landscapes into gardens, how to change poisoned air into breathable atmosphere, and how to turn weapons into tools for building. Master Kyung-ho was the most mysterious of the champions. He established monasteries on several worlds, but he only accepted students who came seeking wisdom rather than power. His teachings were simple. True strength comes from knowing when not to use it. Hyun-sik became an unofficial ambassador between species. He had a gift for helping different cultures understand each other. When conflicts arose, he would mediate with patience and calm that seemed to flow into everyone around him. But the most important change was in how the galaxy saw itself. For thousands of years, the different species had lived in isolation, trading with each other but never really connecting. They had formed the Galactic Council, but it was more of a mutual defense pact than a real community. Humans changed that. Wherever humans went, they made friends. They were genuinely curious about other cultures. They asked questions, learned languages, and tried local foods. They shared stories about Earth and asked to hear stories from other worlds. More importantly, they treated everyone as equals. It didn't matter if a species was technologically advanced or primitive, large or small, peaceful or warlike. Humans were interested in everyone. This attitude was infectious. Soon species that had never spoken to each other were sending cultural exchange students to each other's worlds. Trade expanded beyond simple commerce to include art, music, literature, and ideas. The Galactic Council transformed from a loose alliance into a true community of worlds. 5 years after the defeat of the Devourers, the first Galactic Unity Festival was held. Representatives from every known species gathered on a neutral world to celebrate their differences and their friendship. Hyun-sik stood on the observation deck of the Unity Station, watching ships from hundreds of worlds dock peacefully. The diversity was beautiful. Some ships were grown rather than built. Others seemed to be made of pure energy. A few existed in multiple dimensions at once. A young alien approached him. She was small and blue, with large eyes that showed both curiosity and nervousness. "Excuse me," she said in careful human language. "Are you one of the champions?" Hyun-sik smiled. "I'm just a person who tries to help when help is needed." "What's your name?" "I'm Zira. I'm from the Centauri colonies. My teacher told me that humans used to be feared throughout the galaxy. Is that true?" Hyun-sik considered the question. "Yes, it's true. Many species were afraid of us. Why? Because they didn't understand us. And we didn't understand them. Fear often comes from not knowing." Zira thought about this. "But you're not scary at all." "You're nice. Most humans are nice," Hyun-sik said. "Most beings from most species are nice once you get to know them. The galaxy is full of good people who just needed a chance to become friends." As if to prove his point, a group of mixed species children ran past, playing a game that seemed to involve floating in the air while singing in harmony. Their parents watched from nearby, representing 6 different civilizations but all smiling at the same sight. "Is it true that you fought the Devourer Queen?" Zira asked. "My friends and I helped her remember who she really was," Hyun-sik corrected gently. "She wasn't evil. She was just very hungry and very lonely. Sometimes the scariest monsters are just people who have forgotten how to be happy." Zira looked thoughtful. "What happened to her? She's learning to be herself again. She has a new name now, Stella. She helps grow new stars in empty parts of space. She's still hungry, but now she feeds on the joy of creation instead of destruction." A chime sounded through the station.